Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. Today we're checking out UK versus USA culture explained. All in one video.
Britain and America are like twins separated from birth. One was raised in fine aristocracy, and the other was abandoned at a gas station and told, good luck. These two great nations have dominated the world both economically, militarily, and culturally.
Britain got in a big old boat and we set sail and we robbed, and this will sound far-fetched, everyone in the world.
Whilst having spawned from the same origins, they went off in their own two directions, becoming both very similar and very different.
Yo, we all are great. We all should think that we're great. There's no reason for you to not think that you're great.
I've started to get this feeling that I'm totally fucked. You know, everything's fucked.
Today, we will analyze American versus British culture.
Great. Yeah, you guys know I've been watching a lot of videos comparing UK and USA culture. There's a lot that's different. There's a lot that's the same. There's a lot of overlap. I'm predicting they're going to say something like Americans are positive and British are pessimistic.
The American comic hero is a wisecracker who is above his material and who is above the idiots around him. You know that scene in Animal House where there's a fellow playing folk music on a guitar? John Belushi picks up the guitar and destroys it in the cinema lot because he just smashes it and then waggles his eyebrows at the camera. Everyone says, God, he's so great. Well, a British comedian would want to play the folk singer.
Yeah, Stephen Fry has a lot of really intelligent things to say about the difference between US comedy and UK comedy. I did a video about that. It's very interesting. He ties it all the way back to the Puritans coming to America or leaving Europe. He's brilliant.
Comedy is a great way of revealing a culture's ideas. So American comedy and British comedy, they're very different. American comedies always tend to be built around the idea of like optimism and positivity.
Be curious, not judgmental. I like that.
There's typically always the notion that things can get better. You can see this in the character Leslie Knope in Parks and Rec.
I can do it. I can crush him.
And typically, in an American comedy, the cool guy is the main character. Now, let's compare that to British comedies. Typically, the idea in a British comedy is that life will always disappoint you.
Last night for fun, I rewatched Ghostbusters, the very first one from the 80s, and that's popping up in my mind because that is very much this same thing.
Secondly, you'll never make it in life. All your dreams and hopes and optimism is ultimately futile. Another idea that is shown is that you can always expect the worst thing to happen. And finally, the main character, the point of focus in a British comedy will typically be some awkward loser.
I feel like especially in the 1980s, that was a very strong trope in American TV and film. It's kind of relaxed since maybe the last 20 years. That's my theory anyway. I think there's more British-style humor in America because of the internet, basically. That's what I think. That's my theory.
So this leads us to our first key cultural difference. And that is American idealism versus British realism. Instead of me telling you this, I'm going to show you it through expressions. Americans will say things like this. Well, you know what they say. The sky's the limits. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Whereas in Britain, we'll say things like, got hope for the best, but expect the worst, mate. We literally have a thing called Sod's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong.
I thought that was called Murphy's Law.
And then let's say you have a situation where something is looking good. You've got an opportunity. Americans will say, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. That saying is about whenever something bad happens to you, you turn it into something good. Not what he's saying, when you get an opportunity.
Whereas we'll literally say, well, old boy, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And then finally, if you're in America and your whole life is going terribly, is looking awful, Americans say, well, it's always darkest before dawn. In England, if everything's going well, we'll say, yeah, mate, but this is just the calm before the storm. So you might be wondering, why?
Every expression that he just said and declared them to be British, we also say in the United States. So I'm not sure that's a great example.
So you might be wondering, why? Why do we have these very distinct attitude differences?
Attitude.
A lot of the British attitude can really be pointed to our very long and brutal history. We've had tons of wars and plagues and religious upheavals. All of these things have kind of led to British people sort of having doubt and distrust into the future. Like, yeah,
I've watched a few videos about British history and oh my gosh, hundreds and hundreds of years of wars, of fighting generations of people that have been bred to be strong warriors. That has to do something to the mentality of the people, right?
All of these things have kind of led to British people sort of having doubt and distrust into the future. Like, yeah, it might be going well now, but tomorrow a swarm of Belgians might come over and behead us.
Oh.
Understanding our history gives us this cautiousness to being too optimistic about the future. As well, you have to combine the religious attitudes of the Church of England. The Church of England was very much a believer in the idea of original sin. The idea that humans have fallen from God, we're all inherently bad, although we do have the ability to be somewhat redeemed. This has engineered a sort of attitude of cautious optimism. We're not entirely 100% pessimists. All of this combined with the fact that our weather is pretty shit.
Rain, rain, rain. Us Brits endure it on 199 days of every year.
You could literally have a week of sunshine in England and think, you know what, this Saturday, let's go for a picnic with the family. And then because your dad showed some optimism in the weather, God will smite you with a torrential downpour for the next month.
I think weather does affect us a lot more than we realize, mostly subconsciously. When I lived in the Northeast, I got really depressed because there wasn't much sun. I'm originally from the Southeast, where there's a lot of sun. Now I live on the West Coast, where there's even more sun. And I'm happy. I'm a happy guy. I'm a happy boy.
But this general attitude can be completely contrasted with American optimism. And that stems from, ultimately, if you're the type of person to leave Britain, a established nation that has infrastructure, etc., hop on a boat, travel for weeks, months across uncharted waters to arrive on uncharted lands. To do that, you need at least an ounce of optimism.
And an ounce of crazy, an ounce of wild, and maybe an ounce of some kind of negative thing that you're running from.
Look, water, lands in the distance, see? Mate, you've been saying that for the last 3 fucking icebergs. Oh, look, yeah, look, you see it? Another fucking iceberg. I'm tired of this. And then, so after discovering this new land, which was a crazy thing to go and do, America then went through 2 great awakenings. I don't know what happened in the first one, if they just hit snooze or something, but the first great awakening was in 1730 to 1740, and then the second one in 1795 all the way up to 1835.
I remember hearing about the Great Awakening in school, but I don't remember. The third Great Awakening was in the 1850s, where basically, there's a fourth Great Awakening. The fourth Great Awakening is a debated concept. We're just keep awakening over here. That might be a lie we tell ourselves.
So what happened in this was that the religious attitudes of America had evolved. New ideas around like self-improvement, the idea that everyone has the ability to shape their own destiny and their own future. Humans can be better. They can improve society. They can make and create things that make the world better.
Everybody, I know you can believe in yourself.
They had strong convictions around the importance of working hard, as well as very pragmatic things that make the world better.
Everybody, I know you can believe in yourself.
They had strong convictions around the importance of working hard, as well as very pragmatic attitudes, the idea that things should be done well and efficiently. These last 2 led to a very strong cultural focus on capitalism and efficiency in business, which all of this manifested itself in the idea of the American dream.
There's a lot of negative stuff that comes with that too, because there's this constant feeling of competition. If you leave work at 5 o'clock, the person you're competing with might leave at 6 o'clock, which makes me feel pressure to stay till 6:30, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding and adding and adding and adding until we're in a place now where people just get stressed out. I feel like only within the last few years since the pandemic, it's coming to light that it's really unhealthy.
So basically, the idea of the American dream is that any old piece of shit, old Bob who still lives at home with his parents.
Wow. Hey, if you're 40 years old and you live with your parents, I say congratulations. You've won.
40 years old, anyone can go and do anything they want to in life.
That Americans are told they can become the next president of the United States. And they can. British people are told it won't happen to you. And they carry that. They carry that with them.
I know what's probably going through your head. You might hear that and think, fucking hell, why are Britons so pessimistic? I mean, we literally had the biggest empire on earth. Why are we so deflated? And so that leads us to a very core cultural difference between England and America, and that is class structure.
What did he say?
And that is class structure.
Oh, he's saying class structure. I couldn't understand him. Class.
I was brought up in a poor family. I would like to be in it. These lords or ladies or peers or you're talking about these
Really?
class of people.
I wouldn't.
Person's family started with William the Conqueror.
Wow. Do you really want to hang out with those folks? Sounds like a lot of fun.
In Britain, the idea of class and where you stand socially has been a very core part of our identity. Until very recently, as a Brit, your whole life was decided before you were born. These differences between the upper class and the working class has existed through most of British history. There's like this idea that the upper class are pure blood. They were like chosen by God. They had divine rights. They literally referred to themselves as blue-blooded. And they were much better than the grunts working the coal mines to power their beautiful machinery. And so there's always been this attitude in England of like judgment between the classes. The upper class and the working class hate each other. And class is interesting because it's not just defined by wealth. Class is much deeper than simply wealth. It's the accent you talk in, the way you behave, the schools that you're educated in. If you're from Cambridge School of Witchcraft and Wizardry versus the community college in Shitham, literally everything you did would be defined by class. And so there's this understanding that there isn't much class mobility. If you are lower class, even if you got wealthy, you could never be upper class. There's no way. And so this kind of demoralization spawned a attitude in British people that things can't really get that much better. I'm always going to be judged from basically the background that I'm from. In America, as I explained with the American Dream, the attitude is that anyone can be anything. Americans love the idea of the rags to riches story, the underdog archetype that you see in films like Pursuit of Happiness or The Founder. Class does exist in America, but it is very different. You're probably going to see more things between North and South divides and racial divides. But I do, as a British person, quickly want to make a caveat. The British people have never had like outright defeatism. British people will try in life. They'll try very hard, but we just don't like to get our hopes up. We are optimistic, but just in a very cautious way. Like Americans might aspire to be a millionaire CEO of a big tech startup, whilst British people will aspire to one day shop at Waitrose.
Is that maybe like Whole Foods here or Erewhon, like an expensive grocery store?
So the explanation on the class system leads us to another point, which is politeness and expressiveness. Here's your food, sir. What the fuck is that? Everything okay with the food? Oh yes, lovely, thank you. I would say British people are kind of overly aware of being rude and impolite, which has some benefits. You know, we treat people really well. We hate to be awkward and we like people to feel relaxed, but it can cause British people to take way too much shit and not stand up for themselves. Americans will tolerate less bullshit, which is a good thing, but then sometimes they can be a bit rude and a bit overly confrontational. I have waited exactly 5 minutes. It is a Big Mac. How long do you need? This difference when it comes to being polite probably stems from the British Reserve and American individualism. British people are very reserved. Typically, in public, we all sit like this and we're all very quiet and we don't laugh too loud and we try and be really polite. And this can stem from the Victorian era. There was very strict social rules over behavior, dress, the way you express yourself. It was very stern and rigid. The reason we tolerate so much shit is because we have the religious idea of turning the other cheek. As well, our probably over-awareness of people's personal space and being rude can probably stem from the fact that we live on a small island very closely together. We don't have a lot of space and we're all on top of each other. So we have a strong respect for people's personal space.
Okay.
And then, like, some of it is the fact that the upper class social attitudes probably trickled down to the working class, where it's always seen as being a lower class thing to speak loudly and have bad manners and be overly confrontational. And so, British people have the attitude of a stiff upper lip, don't show emotion, and don't complain about your problems.
It actually sounds really nice. Ooh. Oh my god.
Well, that was fucking scary.
Whereas Americans, that is not the case.
No.
In the United States, goddamn right. You can't see the picture. Okay, first one, get back over there.
Oh. Big. I have this big.
With that.
This is my right as much as it is yours. This is my land as much as it is yours.
To Americans, I am important. I am the center of the universe. After the Great Awakening, there was a strong focus on individualism. Emotionality and expression is a good thing. Being outgoing and extroverted is a very American thing. British people are very introverted. Americans, after things like the Bill of Rights, have a strong focus on their personal rights and freedoms and liberty. In America, all men are created equal. And so they don't have this idea that you're better than me or I'm better than you by birthright. We're all humans, we all exist, and we all deserve respect. And so this leads to politics and the attitude toward authority.
Legal detention at this point. You better get your shit straight. I will fly up in point. Go.
Am I not human to you, huh?
Americans are inherently very skeptical of authority. They believe more so in small government and self-autonomy due to the British ruling America and, being a bit naughty, a bit rough around the edges. As well, Americans are very rebellious. The formation of America was around escaping the Church of England. In Britain, on the other hand, it is different. We do have a trust in our government. It is waning currently, but typically we trust in have a trust in our government.
Trust in government hits record low at 75%? Wow. I don't know for sure, but I imagine in the United States that's probably like 25% or 30%. Currently, 16% of us trust the government. Wow. Big difference. Whenever I think about the government, and I think about the head of the government, the president, I do feel like the president works for me. And I feel like if we had a king, I would hate him. I think I would not have respect for them because I wouldn't feel like they deserve that position. But at the same time, maybe I would feel a sense of pride, though. It's hard to put myself in that frame of mind.
In Britain, on the other hand, it is different. We do have a trust in our government. It is waning currently, but typically we trust in social order and we don't really make too much of a big deal about infringement of our rights. And that's probably because of years of unquestioned power by monarchs. And again, the stoicism and the idea of stiff upper lip, not complaining too much, not making a big deal. It kind of has led to this polite, submissive behavior, which sometimes is a bit embarrassing.
Careful, sir, it's hot. Oh, sorry. Might burn yourself. Yeah, sorry. Would you like some salt and pepper? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Like you can kind of picture the movie scene of a British person, an American person dealing with authority. Excuse me, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Listen here, tough guy. You don't talk to me like that. Excuse me, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Oh, yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. We'll leave for sure.
But darling, you're dead on the restaurant.
Yes, but I don't want to be rude.
Well, this makes me feel like when I go to Britain, when I walk in a room, I'm just going to be a loud, obnoxious jerk.
And so with all this, you can extrapolate these attitudes and understand different attitudes towards certain issues. For instance, guns. Americans see guns as like a right to protect themselves from the government and other people. America's fast food and subsequent obesity problem has stemmed from the ideas of efficiency in business, not wanting to waste time on food, taking too long to cook. And then you have things like healthcare and welfare. Like in Britain, we have a pretty strong healthcare system. Let's not get into that. Whereas Americans are far more reserved on bringing anything into public domain, especially healthcare.
Don't get me started on healthcare. It's so messed up here. People have to decide if they want to die or go broke. But yeah, let's not get into that.
Britain has an obsession with tradition and upholding tradition, whereas America have a strong focus on new and innovation and new products, technology. And so look, I've picked apart British people and American people. I've made jokes, I've pointed out some bad things, but I want to say, and I think this is true, Americans and British people have a very deep mutual respect for each other. I think very much these days, ever since the war, we've had what has been dubbed a special relationship. Yes. I don't know if that's a gay thing or something, but whatever. As a Brit, I can say honestly, I really do love Americans. I love being around Americans. I really admire their confidence. They're so easy to talk to. They're very warm, open demeanors. British people can be very reserved at times.
Excuse me, young man. Is anyone sitting here? No. Would you mind if we sat here?
No, it's fine.
I'm Ronald. This is Pammy. Actually, you forgot to tell us your name.
Peter.
Peter.
It can be pretty depressing talking with British people.
What's your name?
Peter.
Peter.
Peter! This is spot on. whoever made this.
It can be pretty depressing talking with British people about the future and your ambitions. Whereas Americans are all patting you on the back saying, yeah, you can do it, bro. And I think Americans do appreciate British people as well. They probably appreciate our realism. We don't really bullshit ourselves. We're very honest. We know our strengths, but we also know our flaws. Often Americans see us as well-spoken and intelligent. And you can actually see our comedy has massively influenced modern American comedy. There's a lot more awkward, dry humor in American television now than there ever was in the past.
Yes.
And obviously,
That's a point I wanted to make when I reacted to the Stephen Fry video comparing American comedy and British comedy, that recently, in the past 20 years probably, there's a lot more British-style humor in America, for sure.
And obviously, Americans fucking love our traditions, arguably more than us.
I don't know. You could argue that, but you could also argue the other way. I think the main thing that I admire about the British mentality is modesty, personally. I think it's admirable.
And it leads me to a final thought, and that is about cultural homogenization. With the internet, culture across the world has sort of melted together. We're all seeing the same media constantly. I will listen to endless American podcasters telling me to go after my dreams and fix my life or something. The idea that the internet is bringing lots of different value systems together and you can kind of choose which one suits you as opposed just the one that dominates your country. But I do wonder, are we going to see less of these interesting differences and are we just going to become a sort of best of greatest album kind of thing? Let me know in the comments if you want to see more on this topic. Check out the Afters podcast where we talk more about this.
Our cultures are becoming more homogenized for sure. I mean, just my personal experience, all of these YouTube videos that I've been watching about British culture, I'm learning so much that I never knew before. 30 to 50 years ago, I would not have access to that kind of information, at least not as easily. I'm an actor, and a few years ago I took an acting class where the teacher was teaching us how to do period pieces and how to analyze the script from a period piece. Basically, what he taught us was that if something happened before the year 2000, then it's a period piece. And there's very clear and specific traits to each decade. There's style, the way people talk, the world they lived in was very specific. But from the 2000s, that's not necessarily the case. Language traits, the trends that happen, turn over so quickly now that there's not really an identifiable culture. Maybe that will come into focus as time moves on and we look back on this time period, but now it kind of seems like everything's sort of mixed up, sort of a meta postmodern. So American optimism, British pessimism, basically, right? Realism, not pessimism. Realism. That's not to say that there aren't any optimistic British people, right? Yeah, there surely are. Mr. Bean, he's optimistic, he's hopeful, and there are definitely realistic or pessimistic Americans for sure. There's definitely some overlap between us. It's really interesting how those attitudes can be traced back to hundreds of years ago. But really interesting video. I think this guy nailed it pretty much. Thank you all for recommending. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Later.